What's up, Wizards? It's Deb from The Place. We're going to look at some murders at Karlov Manor. Spoilers live tonight. That's what we're right here on twitch.tv/SBMTGDev. Don't you want to be part of the party? We're probably going to do at least one more of these spoiler videos on Twitch. So if you want to follow and be over here with the rest of the chat and just having a good time hanging out in between cards, sometimes I'll look over here and talk to you. You know what I mean? You know, just check out the Twitch. Look in the description. But anyway, let's go ahead and start looking at some cards because we got like 20 of them today, and I got more stuff I want to do after this tonight on stream. So we got to get to it because we got a lot of good stuff today. We got the normal amount of bad stuff too, and we'll get through that, but we got some really good stuff that I want to look at today. So let's go ahead and load it up. Are we in a good position head wise? Oh, I can actually make my head slightly bigger. How do you feel about that? I've always wanted a big old head. I've always had a big old head. All right, here we go. Let's look at Jaded Analyst to start the night. I love the flavor on this. I'm too old for this crap. He's 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 3/2 human detective with Defender. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, Jaded Analyst loses Defender and gains Vigilance until end of turn. So you light a fire under his butt, or you light a fire under his anal list. When you draw your second card each turn, he's like, I remember why I love this job in the first place. So I guess he's decent in limited, but he's more really there to make jokes about the flavor. I like him. But Maob Reconstruction is up next. 4 mana, 3 and a black for a sorcery that costs 2 less to cast if a creature card was put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn. Return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hando. So I like that it has Macabre in it because it reminds me of Macabre Waltz. And I like that. This is definitely a limited card. That's why it's the second card we're looking at all night. Because this is mostly just limited playable, but it is at its best, which you'll probably never really want to play it otherwise. But you could, theoretically, if you're in a jam, draw it off the top of your library, you could. But if you play it the right way, it's 2 mana for 2 cards. And that's actually really, really good. It's also common, so like Pauper playability is a consideration, but I'm not sure we're really... Pauper's a higher power format than that most of the time, you know what I mean? So, not too sure, but 2 mana for 2 cards, when you actually hit the ceiling of it, is quite decent in a lot of ways. So, I think this is probably very good in limited and not good in constructed, but like, we're getting there. Like, we're very close to getting there. We're not quite getting there, but we're close. Now, Harry Dronesmith is up next. This is 4 mana, 3 and a red for a 2/3 human artificer at the beginning of combat on your turn. Create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. It gains haste till end of turn. For some reason, you have to sack it at the beginning of your next end step. Why does it make you do that? I really don't understand. Urabrask Forge, this is not like at all. But it is interesting, you know, it gives you a Thopter to get in with if that's what you want to do, but also like artifact that comes into play that might trigger some things on the table. Artifact to sacrifice, which is kind of a sort of a sub-theme in the limited environment with a couple of cards. So it's not too bad. You know, you got the novelist in play, whatever it's called, the goblin that writes books. You got him in play. You can sacrifice the Thopter that you get every turn, and that adds a red mana and puts a +1/+1 counter on the novelist. So that's a neat little combo if you have a way to sack artifacts. I don't know. It's kind of neat, but it's not like going in only Cold Anvil anytime soon. It's not. So I like it, but I don't like it enough. I wish it were better in limited. I really wish you could keep this token. Yeah, the flavor text is somewhat funny. I imagine that no drone that goes into Gruul territory is going to survive, honestly. Everything has reach. Forensic Researcher is up next. 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 1/3 Merfolk Detective. You can tap it to untap another target permanent you control. Now, you can also tap it and collect evidence 3 to tap target creature you don't control. So, ooh, neat. A little tapper here. I like basically any of these cards that tap to untap a thing. You know, I like that it's a permanent, not just like a land. It's kind of cool. They don't tend to be very playable. You know what I mean? They don't find their way into too many decks outside of the odd commander decks that want to untap their cradle or untap their, you know, broken artifact that taps to activate or something. So we may see it there, but there's enough things that already do this, and I'm not sure that it's going to even see play in those very, very, very narrow situations. So not too sure. I guess in limited you get a little bit of tempo, but you can probably only really activate this once or twice a game, and I'm not too sure about it, to be honest. So we'll move on to Hedge Whisperer. I don't know why I hate this card. It's probably actually halfway decent and limited. This is just a green mana for a 0/3 Elf Druid Detective. Pick a job, dude. You may choose not to untap Hedge Whisperer during your untap step. You can pay 3 a green and tap it and collect evidence 4 to have target land you control become a 5/5 green plant boar creature token with haste for as long as Hedge Whisperer remains tapped. Still a land. Activate only as a sorcery. So I want to poop on this, but the positive thing about it, and I think it's a pretty big positive, is that this is a 1 mana guy in limited that becomes amazing late. And it is kind of amazing. You know, you can only ever get one of these 5/5s at a time, but that's still fine. still kind of fine. You know, I'll block all your morph guys. I'm just going to call them morph guys forever. You know, I'll block all your face down 2/2s because I'm a 0/3. And in the meantime, like later on in the game, after I've blocked all that damage, I'll just make a 5/5. I'll just kind of become a 5/5, you know. It's kind of sweet. You don't even have to like wait till you have, you know, an open land, you know, 5 mana effectively to do this. I mean, I guess technically you could, God, it's activate only as a sorcery though. That kind of sucks. It'd be better if you could do it at the end of your opponent's turn or something, but still. I guess on 4 lands you could tap this guy down and make a tapped land a 5/5 because it's still going to be a land, you know, as long as you don't untap this guy on your next turn. So I don't know. There's situations where you might do that. Just all in all, he's good, but there's just every time I look at this card, I'm like, I'm never gonna draft you ever. But like, I'm probably wrong. He's probably actually okay. You know, the small fries that end up being like good in the late game are typically all right. So Granite Witness is up next. This is one of our first disguise dudes. I think we're going to do all the disguise stuff in a row, if I'm not mistaken. I might be mistaken, but in any case, that means this, I think, is the weakest disguise guy, but it's still fine and limited. It's 4 mana, 2 a white and a blue for a 3/2 artifact Gargoyle Detective. It's a gargoyle wearing a little detective's hat. It's amazing. He's got flying and vigilance, and he has disguise Azorius Hybrid. When Granite Witness is turned face up, you may tap or untap target creature, another tapper guy, which is kind of neat. I like this guy kind of on offense or defense, you know, for a little bit of tempo on defense, a little bit of tempo on offense, whatever. So you turn him face up, he flies in with vigilance, so he stays up to block the next turn. That's important on flyers some of the time. His disguise cost is actually reasonable, you know, like if you get him down on turn 3 and then on turn 4 you play a land, you turn him face up, you tap that guy down so you can get in with all your guys. That's, you know, it's not terrible because you still have 2 mana left. You can like play a guy. It's, you know, that's fine. So I don't hate him. There's also probably a line on turn 5 where you play your 5th land and then play another face down guy and then have the mana left to, to turn this guy face up still. So that's, you know, in terms of tempo in the sort of early and mid game, he's not terrible. He's really not. But I don't love him. But, you know, any like 3/2 flyer in limited is going to be worth looking at, basically. Museum Nightwatch is next. 4 mana, 3 and a white for a 3/2 Centaur Soldier. And when he dies, you create a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token. So kind of cool. He disguises for just a single white and a single mana of any color. So 2 mana to disguise this dude too. Again, I like these cheap disguise costs. And I like that this is yet another thing that kind of, how do I put this? There's a lot of disguise cards in this set at the lower rarities that kind of assume they're going to die in combat. You know? Like, oh, we saw the Rakdos guy that when he dies, you can nail a target for 2 damage, you know. I think we saw, what is it, Dog Walker? Like when he's turned face up, he gives you 2, like, 1/1 dog tokens. And it kind of assumes that maybe you're going to lose him, but still, you know, you trade with your opponent in combat, you go up by 2 dogs on the table, you know. So it seems like there's a lot of this kind of incremental advantage that happens when you flip your dudes up and you're trying to win this war of attrition. A lot like Cons, right? It's a little bit like Cons limited with all of its morph stuff. So I don't know. Again, 2 mana to uncloak this is halfway decent, and it's almost always going to trade in combat. Not almost always, but a lot of the time it'll trade in combat. And even if you play it as just a 4 mana 3/2, still not terrible because, again, it's going to die and make a 2/2, and that's going to be able to block all the face down stuff and hopefully win those interactions, so, or at least trade in those interactions. So I like it. I kind of like this. I think it's a pretty bread and butter little white common here. But Concealed Weapon is up next. This is This is really interesting to me. This is 2 mana, 1 and a red for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+0, and you can equip for 1 and a red. But here's the deal. It's got Disguise, 2 and a red. When it's turned face up, you can attach it to a creature you control. That's really, really neat. Really, really neat. Like a combat trick that's also a guy. You know, like, and it'll come out of nowhere too. You know, when you actually think about the game situations that this will, you know, be around in, I guess. I don't know how I wanted to say that. But anyway, you actually think about this in a game, in a real game situation. It gets really interesting, man, because it doesn't look like much at first glance, right? But you play this as a disguised dude, and then the next turn you attack with like it and maybe 1 or 2 other guys, you know? And then if your opponent blocks it, suddenly you can turn it face up, invalidate that block in a way, you know, and give one of your other dudes +3/+0, like one of your unblocked guys gets +3/+0 and gets in for more. Or maybe you trade up, you know, in a way that you weren't expected to because you equip this to something that's blocked by a huge guy. So that could happen. It could happen defensively too, you know. You block with it and another creature against something, and then suddenly, you know, you can just turn it face up, and whatever it blocked is considered blocked for combat. And then, you know, you just attach it to something else, and it can just take out, you know, again, something much bigger than it. So, I don't know. I think that this is actually really cool. I don't think it's standard playable. I don't think too many of these disguise cards are. I think that in standard right now, if you're disguising a card on turn 3, you're cloaking, whatever you want to call it, if you're putting a card face down on the table and using your entire turn 3 to do that, I think you're probably losing in standard right now. So I think disguise is kind of a really tough sell, you know. But in limited, this has so many like really neat interactions, you know. And yeah, so Lord Bios, I was going to point this out. It's slightly bigger than the guy, you know. So, you know, like it's a 2/2 as a creature, but it's +3 power as an equipment. So kind of adds damage to the board in a way. It's really, I don't know. It's really, really neat. Really neat way to do a combat trick. But anyway, my favorite of the disguise cards today, I think, is Nervous Gardener. This is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 2/2 Dryad with Disguise green. When Nervous Gardener is turned face up, search your library for a land card with a basic land type, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle. Neat. Okay, so I think for the most part, it's not like Sylvan Ranger or whatever. I think that's the card I'm thinking of, but it's not that card, but it's a close approximation. I think right now, like, what is it? Ambitious Farmhand and Clay-Fired Bricks are cards that are probably slightly better than this in standard, even though they just go get a plains. This can go get anything, but I think that if you play a Farmhand on turn 2, that was a good use of your mana. If you play this on turn 3 as a 2/2 with no abilities other than Ward, and then use one of your turn 4 mana to disguise this, I really don't think you're doing great. But again, that's constructed, but it's okay. It's not terrible, but in limited, this is more than fine. You know, making sure you get important land drops is great in limited, so I like it. I do like it. And again, this is just like some of the other cards with disguise that are going to die when they when they flip up. You know, this doesn't even have a very high power, so I guess the idea is that it's going to swing into or block against another face down thing, you know. So when it flips up, it's still going to be a 2/2. It's going to trade with the face down thing, and it's going to give you some, you know, card advantage. It's going to replace itself, whereas your opponent's thing theoretically doesn't, you know, so it puts you up a card. And a lot of these disguise cards, again, at the lower rarities, want to do something like that. You know, we just saw the thing that puts a 2/2 into play when it dies. This also gives you a card, you know, so I like that. Again, a lot of incremental advantage at play at the lower rarities on these disguise things, and I think that's going to be, like, really shape the limited environment. But moving on to Goblin Mask Maker. This is a single red mana for a 1/2 Gobbo citizen, and whenever it attacks, face down spells you cast this turn cost 1 less to cast. This is extremely important. Just the existence of this card, much more important than it might look, right? First of all, in constructed, this might help at least make the cloak, the sort of the face down deck, face down booty up deck, you know, work in that format. You know, if you get this as a 1-drop, it becomes a lot more desirable to play that 2/2 Ward 2 on turn 2 rather than have to wait until turn 3. Hi all the time, Monkey, my actual real life cousin. Thank you. Appreciate you, Jason. Thanks for the sub. But in any case, yeah, as a 1-drop in Standard, this is going to make playing, face down cards a little bit more palatable on curve, so that's good. But it's a common, so in Limited, you might be able to draft multiple copies of it, helping your chances getting on turn 1. If you do get it on turn 1 in Limited, and you have a lot of disguise guys in your deck, which shouldn't be too hard, then suddenly this dude's God. He's just a godlike creature. You get your disguise stuff in play like a turn earlier than your opponent. That's just a massive deal. This dude may as well be a Lana War Elves. Totally serious. This dude may as well be Lana War Elves, Birds of Paradise, whatever, in Limited. And in Constructed, too, where you're just playing the disguise deck, this dude is your version of a 1-mana ramp guy. So actually really interesting design on this, and again, it's going to really pump up some Limited decks, Oh, and Megamorph. Yeah, I forgot about Megamorph. Those the other versions of face down stuff, Private Eye is up next. Detectives Matter card. 3 mana, 1 a white and a blue for a 3/3 Homunculus Detective. Other detectives you control get +1/+1. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, target detective can't be blocked this turn. If you are accusing the set of having some parasitic mechanics, I could see the whole detectives thing being a point in your favor. There's not a whole lot of detectives, are there? None outside this set, unless you count changelings. And you should. I actually think that almost any new creature type, that's introduced isn't necessarily by nature parasitic, just because it only appears in one set. Just because changelings do exist, doesn't mean you're going to be able to make a detective theme in your cube or make a detective like commander deck anytime soon. But, well, you probably will be able to make a detective commander deck, actually. I bet there's going to be a detective commander deck. I think I've already seen the Bant one. Is that guy a detective? I bet he is. But anyway, that was a whole tangent to go off on. But as far as the actual function of the card, very good, I think. I like the draw your second card each turn sub-theme. I always like when that's a sub-theme. It's actually one of my favorite little mechanical sub-themes they do every few sets. Love it, love it. So it's pretty cool. Target detective can't be blocked this turn is very sick, especially, again, when you acknowledge the existence of changelings. It's kind of cool. And just any Anthem effect is always I'm going to be happy with that. It's also a 3/3. It's a 3-mana 3/3 Anthem effect. A lot of the times this would just be a 2/2, but no. Went ahead and made it a 3/3. I support that. It's a good card. But Projector Inspector is up next. They just wanted people to be like, ooh, bars, but not really. It's 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 3/2 human D-Tech, and whenever it or another D-Tech enters the battlefield under your control, and whenever a detective you control is turned face up, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. That was a mouthful, jeez. So whenever it enters the battlefield, draw a card, discard a card. Okay, that's kind of okay, just in and of itself. Also does that whenever detective beside it enters the battlefield. Also does that when you turn a detective face up. So it's kind of neat. A little bit amazing that it's a common. Here the next set will have all the detectives. Exactly. Yeah, just because it's only in one set now doesn't mean it won't be in all the sets. The next set is the cowboy set, and there's a bunch of detectives in that set. It could work. Probably not. It could. Theoretically, it could. But anyway, I don't hate this, man. I really don't. 3 mana, 3/2, draw a card when it comes into play. Sure, you got to discard, but you can turn that into an upside real quick. So I think it's okay. Even if it only ever does the one, loots when it comes into play. It's not bad. I guess, Ether Channeler could loot and do something else when it came into play. I think Ether Channeler just draws a card when it comes into play. Sees absolutely no play. 0, and it's a good card. So I don't have the highest hopes for this or anything, but I don't know. I really like that new detective that has the exact same mana cost as this and draws 2 when it ETBs. And you discard 2 unless you discard instant sorcery or creature with flying. And that card's just better than this. So that, I guess, further cements the idea this will never see play. But that card I'm really excited to play, and this one is the budget version of that. So it's not terrible. Escape Tunnel is next. It's this is a strictly better Evolving Wilds. Terramorphic Expanse. Take your pick of, common, EDH, playable, fetch land. This is just better than all of them now. It has invalidated their existence. Escape Tunnel is a land that you can tap and sacrifice to search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. That's Evolving Wilds, but it does another thing. Tap, sacrifice escape tunnel. Target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. Pretty hot, actually, especially when you consider there's plenty of ways to like increase its power after you sacrifice this, so that's kind of neater after it goes unblocked officially, you know what I mean? You can increase its power. Like a Bart. A Bart is a good example off the top of my head because I'm always thinking about Bart, just like sack escape tunnel while it's still 2 power and then sacrifice like all your stuff to the Bart and it gets huge and you get in, you win the game, you have fun, eat pizza. So I don't know. It just is a better Evolving Wilds. It just means it's great. It actually means it's kind of one of the better cards of the day. Going to be played in a bunch of commander decks, especially ones that have creatures that matter for this ability. 2 damage isn't a whole lot, so I imagine the real way to do this is, again, either to increase the creature's power somehow afterwards, or play it in like an infect deck of some kind. But other way is to play a commander or other creatures that care about getting through with a small guy for whatever reason. A commander that has power 2 or less and also has like a combat damage trigger. This is fine with. So I like it. Human music. I like it. Gearbane Orangutan, baby. This is 3 mana, 2 and a red for a 2/2 ape with reach. It's really hard to miss that reach, but it's got it. And when it ETBs, choose one. Either destroy up to 1 target artifact, or sacrifice an artifact. Sacrifice an artifact. If you do, put 2 +1/+1 counters on orangutans. A 3 mana 4/4. If you sack a piddly little clue token or something like that, you got a bunch of artifacts laying around, just sack one. It's fine. Or, and this is important, way strictly better Uktabi Orangutan. It's in a different color, but it can, if your opponent doesn't have an artifact, it's still playable in your deck that does have artifacts. And I just threw a keyword ability on it. Uktabi Orangutan doesn't have no keyword abilities. It's good. And like Uktabi Orangutan still sees play in like certain commander decks and stuff. So just gross. A gross card, man. It's a really good card. It's like sideboard playable, If you've got a bunch of artifacts in your deck, it might be main deck playable because 3 mana 4/4 is fine. 3 mana 4/4 reach is especially fine. So this guy's great. One of the better commons of the day and maybe even in some ways of the set. King Louis right here. Just really looks good. It's a good looking ape, I gotta say. It's very solid, yeah. Drag the Canal is next, though. Is this our first rare? Is there another rare? No? Okay. Oh, we'll get to you. We will get to you. Drag the Canal is up next. This is a blue and a black for an instant. Create a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token. If a creature died this turn, you gain 2 life, surveil 2, and then investigate. Wow. It's a lot of stuff, What all do you do with that? A lot. Turns out that this probably just combos really well with like a cut down, especially when your opponent attacks in with like 2 guys, especially in the early game. Your opponent swings in with 2 dudes and you cut one of them down and you use your other 2 mana to make the 2/2. Gain 2, surveil 2, investigate. Like, geez Louise. Just seems great to me. This kind of puts you up 2 cards. Right, because it replaces itself with the 2/2 body, like a little sort of, not really. It replaces itself with the investigate, and also gives you a 2/2 body. Also, surveil 2 is like as close to a drawn card as you can get, So that's pretty good. Also just puts an artifact on the table if that matters, and like it looks like there might be a clue deck. We'll see in this next card. So solid. I actually think it might though. In the end, be harder to get this off than you think. You need a removal spell in your hand to get it off, so that's another card plus more mana. Or you have to have one of your dudes die, and that isn't going to happen every single turn. You're not going to have dudes on the board every turn. You might not even have that many dudes in your deck if you want to play a card like this. So I just don't know if it's as good as I want it to be, but obviously if you can get it to pop off, it's good. And I want to say that like a 2 mana 2/2 at instant speed is kind of okay, but it's really not. It's not a high enough floor to justify playing the card. So you'd really have to make sure you can pop off the whole card as often as possible. And I don't know. You know what I mean? So not sure it's going to get there a lot of the time, but it is a cool card. Up next, though, speaking of cool cards, dude. Had to take a sip. Persuasive Interrogators. Never trust a big button to smile. 6 mana, 4 and 2 black for a 5/6 Gorgon Detective. When it enters the battlefield, you get to investigate. Whenever you sacrifice a clue, target opponent gets 2 poison counters. So note that says whenever you sacrifice a clue, not whenever you pop a clue with its own ability, not whenever you pay to draw the card off of a clue. No, just whenever you sacrifice a clue to any effect whatsoever, kid. So, Bartolome del Presidio. That is the guy. I was just talking about him, actually. I should probably tell you what he does in case you don't know, so I'm not just talking to a brick wall here. You should be in on things. You know, he's the 2 mana guy from LCI that you can sack an artifact or a creature and he gets a +1/+1 counter. He's in Orzhov colors. So as long as you have stuff that makes clues on curve, you might be able to pull this off, man, because if you resolve this, it gives you the clue when it comes into play. You just need 4 clues when you cast it. It resolves. You have 5 clues after it's into the battlefield trigger resolves. And then you can just sack your 5 clues to Bartolome and win the game. Just win the game. And there's other stuff, obviously, in white and black that can put poison on your opponent. I don't know that you actually want to play it, but at least maybe Skrelv, because there's important creatures in this deck you want to protect. Obviously, you want to not just resolve this, but have it on the table when you sack all them clues, you know? So, with that in mind, a card like Skrelv to protect it, a card like Skrelv to protect Bartolome, you know, that seems like it might be important. And in the meantime, it can get creatures through for toxic damage. So that could work out, you know, decrease the number of clues you actually need on the table when this comes down to win the game. Aside from that, though, there's a bunch of cards we've already seen that create clues in this set and other sets too in Standard. That could be somewhat playable. You know, there's Fateful Absence. You can play it in your deck and target your own stuff with it when need be, but I don't think that's the strongest thing. Although you might as well play Fateful Absence in this deck. You know what I mean? There is that. But in this set, we have seen, you know, a 3 mana, 2/4 flying Vigilance that, like, at the end of the turn, if your opponent has more cards than you get to investigate. So that's a not embarrassing card to play on curve. Teysa in this set, if an opponent lost life this turn during your end step, you get to investigate. Not an embarrassing card at all. There's a 1-drop, I think it's like Novice Inspectigate or something like that. It's just a reprint of Thraben Inspector. So 1 mana, 1/2. When it comes into play, you get a clue token. So again, obviously not an embarrassing card. We know Thraben Inspector is a good Magic card. So seems like there's a lot of stuff that put clues into play that, again, you don't mind playing. They're not bad Magic cards. Excuse me. And the only real challenge with this deck is getting to 6 mana to actually play it and win the game in Standard, which is going to be the hard part of the card. It is. Hamhawks, fellow content creator Hamhawks, pointed out on Twitter under my post for that. He replied to me with a really good point, really good piece of tech. Just play Cavern of Souls in your deck. Just play Cavern of Souls and name Detective, and then suddenly this is guaranteed to resolve, which is a really, really, really big deal. So shout out to Hamhawks for that piece of tech. That's a good job. So I think that there's definitely at least like a janky deck going on somewhere with this. So, maybe, you know, six is too much. If this costs 5, it would be incredibly busted. My original post on Twitter, I wrote something like, you know, I ended up erasing it and writing something else. But the thing I wanted to say originally was that this would be busted at 7 mana. This would be busted at 8 mana. And they knew it was bust. They knew this line of text was absolutely gross. So they made this cost 6, but if we can ramp it into play or cheat it into play, maybe with a Kaya. Remember we saw that 4 mana Kaya Planeswalker a couple of days ago. And she's basically kind of a zombify a little bit, you know? So kind of neat. You know, on turn 4, you can play Kaya, throw this into play, and actually make one of your clues into this, and then wait, does that work the way I want it to? Does that work the way I want it to? Hold on, Kaya. We're all gonna look at Kaya together, everybody. Oh god, Kaya murders at Karlov Manor. Is it in addition to its other types? It remains that images. Show me the card. All right, so it's Probably way too small for any of you to read. Whenever one or more creatures you control and or creature cards in your graveyard are put into exile, you may choose a creature card from among them. Until end of turn, target token you control becomes a copy of it, except it has flying. But it's still a clue, right? Still a clue. Still a clue, I assume. So technically, it wouldn't work though. It wouldn't, would it? If this was if this is a clue, this is such a weird rules interaction. If this is a clue because Kaya's ability made one of your clues a copy of it, so it has the clue subtype, and it's the last clue you sacrifice, does it go off? I don't know. You think it works? If it becomes a copy, it'll lose its old typing. Does it? Does it? I don't know that. But Kane and Vector Falcon both say if it becomes a copy, it will change what it is. It will no longer be a clue. And if that's the case, then this does not work. So that would suck. But I'll have to see it. I'll have to try it to believe it. Because if that works, that's absolutely gross. And it's exactly the kind of stupid, like wonky rules interaction that Wizards would implement on purpose. So it won't be a clue. It'll still make 2 triggers for each clue. So that's fun. But it will not. Kane is doubling down. Outcast Kane in chat, valued and knowledgeable member of chat, is doubling down. It will not be a clue. So, okay, I trust Outcast Kane. But boy, do I want it to. Either way, this card, just this line of text, costs 6 mana for a reason. We're gonna try to make it work. We're gonna try to make it work, everybody. But Pride of Whole Clade is up next. I got to get off that card eventually. I've got to. I can talk about it all night, but Pride of Whole Clade is 11 mana. It's 10 and a green for a 2/15. Like, what a weird card. 11 mana for a 2/15 legendary Crocodile Elk Turtle. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total toughness of creatures you control. It has Defender, and for 2 and 2 blue until end of turn, target creature you control gets +1/+0 for some reason. Gains whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw cards equal to its toughness, and can attack as though it did not have Defender. So, weirdest card ever. Such a weird card, man. I kind of love it. It's a Crocodile Elk Turtle, which is them Simic. Oh, them Simic, just really getting up to the weirdest stuff. But I think this was a pretty successful experiment on their part. This is cool. This is a cool spin-off of Galta. Yeah, Arcades does. You have to play this card in your Arcades deck. Honestly, what if you have a 3/3 and a 2/2 out? What does this card cost? 6 to cast? That's not bad, right? It's not bad. It's like if you cast a Pugnacious Hammer Skull on turn 3, can you cast this on turn 4? No, not quite. Not quite. It costs 5 mana, doesn't it? Yeah, something like that. That kind of sucks. That kind of sucks. I guess if you go like Pugnacious, well, it doesn't, you can just play a 2-drop. Just play an Armored Scrap Gorger or something like that. That's 3 toughness into Hammer Skull on turn 3. And then on turn 4, you can play this with mana left over, like 2 mana left over. So nasty. But is it like that? Is it really that good? Like even on turn 4, is it that good? I don't know. If it draws 15 cards, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. And I guess if you're attacking with Hammer Skull at the same time, then, sometimes Hammer Skull is going to get in for 7 and draw 6, which is also just nasty. Just absolutely nasty, dude. This card draws 15. Has to be good, right? Has to be. You just Hammer Skull plus Mana Dorks. Exactly what I was saying. That could totally work. Very easily, especially with the number of Mana Dorks we have that have like 3 toughness in standard, like Llanowar Loam Speaker, Armor Scrap Gorger. Could be good. Could be fun, but I don't think it's actually good. I don't. I just don't. So, fun, but we'll see what happens. It's just achievement unlocked. You drew 15 with it. Have a good day. Try to win the game. Did you? You still didn't win the game. You drew 15. You didn't win the game. Probably how that's going to go half the time. But it can be very cheap to cast. It can theoretically only cost 1 green to cast. It's pretty good in that situation. I bet that, the actual ceiling on this is casting it for a single green mana and still having the mana to activate it the turn it came into play. That's the one, right? That's how you do it. This is how we do. What is the Dimir card, guys? What is that Dimir card from Kamigawa? That it brainstorms when it comes into play, and Hitotsugu and Kairi. Okay, I don't think that Hitotsugu and Kairi works the way I want it to, but I should just go to Scryfall and do it that way. But I think maybe normal Hitotsugu does. When Hitotsugu enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards, put 2 cards from your hand. When it dies, exile the top card of your library. Target opponent. Okay, it does work the way I want it to. Okay, when Hitotsugu and Kairi dies, exile the top card of your library. Target opponent loses life equal to its mana value. If it's an instant or sorcery, you can cast without paying its mana cost. So, okay, so that's so gross. So this costs 11. It's not an instant or sorcery, so you don't get that cool part of the card, but it just 11s them, which is pretty gross. Yikes. That seems fun in your Soul Tide deck. So, all right. It's okay. I should have definitely left Scryfall up. We'll be using it again tonight. Let's look at Connect the Dots. Is this actually, yeah, we're like close to my favorite card of the day. Connect the Dots is 2 mana. This is a pretty powerful looking card. I have some doubts, but in any case, 2 mana, 1 and a red for an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks, exile the top card of your library face down. You can't look at it. It says that in reminder text. 1 and a red, discard your hand, sacrifice to Connect the Dots. Put all cards exiled with Connect the Dots into their owner's hands. So, it turns all your guys into Bomac couriers, is kind of what this does, but it is not a guy itself and costs 2 mana. This costs like your entire second turn, so it looks like a refill for aggro. But is it a refill for aggro if you have to skip your turn 2? I guess the other idea is that you play it on turn 3 and immediately attack with 2 guys on turn 3, while also having a mana left over to cast like a 1 mana guy or removal spell or monstrous rage or shock or just whatever, or you play it on turn 4, and attack with like 3 or 4 guys and have a refill cocked and loaded, which I think that my inclination is to snidely answer, well, if your aggro deck hasn't won by turn 4, then you're not going to win anyway. But that's just not true. That's the kind of thing that I think some jaded Magic players, would say. But aggro decks don't win by turn 4 all the time. All the time. There is some opportunity cost to this card because, aggro decks have to use their slots as efficiently as possible. Aggro decks are just come at you, you know what I mean? So they can't play slow cards. They just can't do that. So this is a little awkward for them, but if it draws them even 2 cards, I feel like if you pay 2 mana on the turn you discard this, or on the turn you activate it, if you pay 2 mana and you draw 2 cards off of it, aggro they just like that. That's good enough some of the time, If you're just digging for like the lightning strike to finish them off, you'll take 2 cards. But in those situations where it draws 3, 4, it's a bonkers card. It's just an absolutely disgusting card. So I don't know, man. I'm really on the fence about it. Because it looks like it could be bad in aggro, but it also looks like, again, if you didn't win the game by turn 4, this draws you the lightning strikes. It draws you the hasty guys. It draws you the wrath protection, in the form of more guys. It draws you all your hasty dudes and your burn spells for after the wrath. So I guess, in that situation where you are playing against like Domain Ramp and they're going to Sunfall you on turn 4, a good way to use your mana, because you don't want to play a creature on turn 4, especially when they can't attack, because they're going to Sunfall you some of the time. You just don't want to play into it unless you can put lethal on the board. This might be a good way to use your mana. Just Connect the Dots, pay 2, get it down, attack with 3 or 4 guys, and now after they Sunfall, you've got your refill. Again, just cocked just in the chamber. So, okay, I think it's pretty. I actually think it's good. Commander playability, I think, is pretty high too. Obviously, this is a good commander card. especially in tokens decks where you're attacking like 30 guys, you know what I mean? It seems okay. It's not a May ability though, so be very careful with it in Commander, but I don't know. I do think this is a fairly strong card. Obviously, a lot of creatures need to be attacking, and it's a little awkward, and your creatures have to attack deck, but man, when you draw 4 off of it, you're probably going to win the game because you did that. So I think it might be good. It's probably good. But anyway, yeah, probably mono red sideboard. Yeah, that's probably a good place for it. Vannifar Evolved Enigma is our last card of the new cards today. Actually, it's not. I think I have 1 or 2 more to do. The reload Mythic spoiler. I know there's at least one we haven't talked about. But Vannifar Evolved Enigma is 4 mana, 2 in Simic colors, a green and a blue, for a 3/4 legendary Elf Ooze Wizard. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose 1. Cloak a card from your hand. That means put it face down as a 2/2 with Ward 2. Or put a +1/+1 counter on each colorless creature you control. So not just like face down guys, not just face down, artifacts and stuff. If you happen to have a colorless dude that isn't an artifact, good job. So, I don't know. Again, there's most likely face down guys, right? But I don't know. This technically puts 5 power into play the turn it comes into play, and then it puts 2 more, and then it puts 2 more, and then it puts 2 more, and that seems good. It does cost a card from your hand, so it's not like, it just gives you a free 2/2 every turn. It doesn't do that. I think that's a very real cost. I do. So it may suck more than I want it to for that reason. But this, over the course of, a full turn cycle, basically puts 7 power into play on 3 bodies for 4 mana. And that is close. That's really, really close. Does it beat mono red? Not necessarily, but it ain't terrible. It brick walls them a little, puts 2 guys into play. Does it beat ramp? Not really. I don't think it's fast enough or anything to beat ramp. It doesn't go underneath anything. Does it beat Golgari? It competes with Golgari. Beat and compete are 2 different things, even though they rhyme. But it does, it keeps you up with sort of Golgari, sort of mid-range, grindy sort of tricks where it gets a lot of cards and creatures and all that refills. So that's something. Does it beat Esper? No. It doesn't beat Sheldred. It doesn't beat Rafine. Not really, Even it doesn't even really beat Dinnick when Dinnick gets the flying and disturb or whatever. It doesn't beat Dinnick with the 2/2s, So I don't know. I guess when it puts +1/+1 counters on it, it starts beating Dinnick. So I don't know where this fits in standard, but it is pretty undeniably a powerful card. And, Sheldred. Let me say Sheldred one more time. That's a 4 mana guy it's a 4 mana lady, rather, I guess. That everything's a guy. that puts that does 2 damage to them every turn. It can do way more than that, but it does at least 2 to them every turn. This puts 2 power into play almost every turn that you can handle that. So for the same mana cost, same mana value. But obviously Sheldred's a much better card in most ways. So it's not even a great comparison, but, a potential 2 damage a turn for 4 mana, whatever. Altogether, I think it's a cool little grindy card, but I will repeat one more time, even though I've tried not to repeat myself this spoiler season as often. But I do think it bears repeating that Cloak is way different than just put a 2/2 into play, So I'm not sure about it. I'm really not. But that is all the cards from tonight. I do think that Vannifar is fairly strong. I do think that it's somewhat okay. If you don't cloak a card, obviously you're going to make your guys bigger. So, if you go cloak a card, +1/+1 counter, +1, you never cloak a card again, then suddenly, the card can win the game by itself. And that is an important metric for a Magic card. Does the card win the game by itself? Is it a credible threat that, if left unchecked, will win the game? Yeah, it is that. So you got to give it points for that, You can flip a card. Can you flip a card that doesn't have a disguise cost? Somebody said the cost to flip is its normal casting cost. I'm not like... I believe that is correct. I think that's correct, actually. That you can flip a card up that's cloaked anytime for its mana value, its casting cost. I believe that's how cloak works. So you can do some fun stuff with that. You can, but obviously you want to be cloaking creatures. If you turn like spells face up, they don't do anything. So, You don't necessarily want to do that, but you know, that is a part of it I haven't talked about. You can, in fact, to the best of my knowledge, turn cloaked creatures face up for their mana cost. So neat stuff, but altogether, it's probably okay. I know that I've been kind of kicking it around a little bit, but it's actually probably okay, man. But altogether, I think Connect the Dots is one of the better cards of the night. Persuasive Interrogators is my favorite card of the night by a lot. And maybe even like low-key could be the best card of the night. It really could be. So, well, we got some good stuff. Gearbane Orangutan, the Strictly Better Evolving Wilds, you know. Goblin Mask Maker, important card. So there was some cool stuff in tonight's spoilers. But that's about it for today. We'll get another, I think, 10 or 12 tomorrow, and we'll keep getting them throughout the weekend. Usually they stop for the weekend, but for whatever reason, the Where to Find Murders at Karlov Manor page on wizards.com, it's got spoilers up for Friday and Saturday, and a decent number of them too. So there's going to be some real weekend spoilers this time. So stick with the channel for all of them. If you're watching on Twitch right now, that channel is SBMTG. Did you just like happen across the Twitch channel? Like, oh, this guy, he seems clean, seems all right. I'll watch him review some cards. You know, we have a YouTube channel, a whole YouTube channel. Just put in SBMTG in your YouTube search bar and I will pop up. If something else pops up, then notify me so I can be like, what? So anyway, in any case, most of you probably watching on YouTube right now. In case you are, hi YouTube. Hey, Twitch chat, say hi YouTube. But in any case, thanks for coming by my little YouTube neck of the woods to watch some more spoilers. Set is looking pretty interesting so far. There's a lot of fun cards in it, a lot of goofy stuff, but I like goofy Magic. I've been playing Magic for 30 years next year, and I like goofy Magic. We've had goofy Magic since Rabid Wombat, and probably even a little bit before, you know, so no problem with it, dude. And it's not all goofy. There are some real cards in this set, which we are about to talk about here on Twitch. The cards that I'm looking forward to playing with the most so far. So, you know, if you want to watch that and you're watching on YouTube, I don't know how you're going to do that. You just get in a time machine and go back to the Twitch stream and watch it live. Don't you wish you were following on Twitch? Twitch.tv/SBMTGDev, link in the description. But in any case, let me wrap up the YouTube portion of this Twitch stream and just say, do the YouTube things. Like, subscribe if you haven't done it yet for more spoiler content. Decks when the set comes out. Takes. I've got takes to make. You want to sub for those? You can also check out the Patreon. $1 a month is all it takes to vote on content around here. Not just deck techs, but video essays and other stuff that I do. Top 10 lists, whatever. We have a lot of fun on the Patreon. So come by. It's just $1 a month. And I need it. I'm broke. So check out the Patreon. It would mean a lot to me. But aside from that, I'll let you go for this one because that is Allski Kowalski. I am Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.